Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Let's talk about quite a few different things today. Transiting Venus opposite Chiron, transiting Black Moon Lilith, conjunct the North Node in Gemini, and also conjunct Ceres in Gemini. So that's essentially the bulk of what I'm going to be sharing today. First of all, before I bring up a chart and start pointing to things and sharing some thoughts, just wondering how you all are, how you all are coping with the intensity of the cataclysmic nature of events that are before us. Now, I don't think anyone is exempt from feeling a sense of anxiety or stress or concern or worry or fear. In fact, it seems to be that the way the program is playing out, it's specifically designed to promote fear. And so through fear, there's this process that happens to our systems internally, where there's this sense of fight or flight or freeze. And through that space, through that physiological response that's occurring in our body, we make certain decisions which are not always necessarily the wisest ones either. But the point is that what seems to be communicated and shared, certainly on the consensus level through consensus media, is a storyline that is injecting tremendous fear into people about their very livelihood on every single level. And it's very, very concerning to be in that, to see that, to feel that, to hear everybody's worries and concerns. One thing I did say recently when I spoke about Ceres ingressing into Gemini and catching up to the North Node as well in Gemini, and since the North Node has been in Gemini, which has been around about how long has it been? I think it's been about a year or a bit less. There's been an intense volume of information that's being dispersed, and Gemini, being a mutable sign, being ruled by Mercury at a everyday sort of consensus left linear brain level, is incredibly curious in information, in discovering, in listening, in learning, and things like that. And when the world is kind of at a place where we were, let's say 2 years ago, where things were not as they are today, that would normally not necessarily be a problem, right? But in the way the storyline is playing out at the moment, there's just an overload of information, a lot of which seems to be incorrect, misleading, and or false. So just wondering how you're all going. It's a very trying and testing time for all of us. And one other thing I wanted to say about that as well is that it really has to be a priority for all of us to be aware, to maintain a level of awareness and understanding about what is going on so that we can be better informed relative to the choices we make. But it is also very important that we literally pull ourselves out of that, tune out, let the mind have a rest and just go into the body and into the heart, anchor into the heart, and of course into the soul. But the way I think to get to that kind of space within is to take it through the body, through exercise and breath work particularly, and or walking in nature, going for a run or a hike or whatever you have access to or whatever appeals to you, but certainly using the body to ground you and take you back into the heart center. See, even in terms of the seven traditional chakras in the body, the heart center always anchors us back into a sense of center within. And it is the other spheres in terms of the seven chakras, such as is it the astral? I think it's the astral sort of sphere and level that can kind of create this sense of chaos, right? And the chaos comes, of course, through the mind, because nothing can disturb the body or the heart or the soul if you don't allow it to the through the mind, through the thoughts. It is the thoughts that disturb us in whatever context that may be. So that just shows us that, yes, while we need to be aware of what's going on, we also need to make some kind of effort to just tune out, just let the mind rest and anchor back into the heart. Because the only thing we'll discover if we don't do that is that we are lost in the drama and the chaos, in the uncertainty, in the fear, in the coercion, in confusion, in all those things. And Gemini, being a mutable sign and being ruled by Mercury, Mercury connects to the central nervous system inside the body. So whilst it stimulates curiosity, desire to learn more, to understand more, to connect the dots, it can, because it's mutable, it can also really disturb and disrupt that inner sort of center and balance. Mutable energy is fluid in movement, and it's great from the point of view of being flexible and fluid and sort of moving in and out of whatever it is. But on the other hand, when that is not monitored, it is also the energy that will take you out of your center, and there's this sense of energy just being dispersed in all sorts of different directions, which can become very chaotic and essentially provokes a lot of anxiety. So I go through these moments myself, because I'm also, just as you guys are, very aware of what's going on. You guys know that I'm currently located in Australia, and at the moment it seems that Australia is a real kind of focal point for the world in terms of the diabolical storyline that's playing out here with the V, and with the restrictions and so on and so forth. And it's been pretty chaotic, pretty intense, and it has created a great level of division between people. And it was pretty clear to me that right from the beginning, this paradigm, this storyline, this program would actually create division. It's inevitable, and that's obviously happening. And the sad thing is that it's happening, in families, so to get to a point in this life where the people that we love and care about, that there can be this sort of division based on a person's personal opinion, perspective, and or belief, is a very tragic place for us to really arrive at. It is, but this is what's happening. So it's very challenging for all of us. Okay, so what I'd like to do is bring up a chart for now. So just to also just add, it is really, and I've said this, but I'll say it again, it is really important that you connect with the body and the heart, to pull you back into a center. It's honestly, if you can do that, even just 15-20 minutes a day, it will actually make a very significant difference to your state of being, to your emotional body, to your mental state as well, and certainly to your physical body, in a very positive way, regardless of the pressure of everything that's going on externally. This program is going to continue. It's going to intensify. It already is intensifying. I think I've said the last couple of videos that, just be mindful, be aware, because as we are moving forward, the push is very intense, and it's moving very, very quickly, because that's the intention. Okay, so again, there is this sense of division in families, in the world, in communities, in you name it, and we don't have control over what anybody else thinks or the choices that they choose to make. Of course, there is an exception there. When you've got young children, then it's your duty and obligation to do your best to protect those children. But just as an adult, relative to other adults, we want to protect the people that we love and care for. But even in that situation, it's proving difficult because there's this absolute division. You're either on this side or you're either on this side. That seems to be what's going on. And that's typical Gemini, by the way. Typical Gemini. Gemini is the archetype that actually splits everything. That's just the nature of Gemini. So we have an abundance of Gemini energy going on. There's the North Node in Gemini, there's Ceres in Gemini, and there's Black Moon Lilith in Gemini, and they're all lining up. I would say this has been in play with Lilith joining as well over the last few days, and they're going to be together, these three bodies, till around the 1st or 2nd of September. So there's an intense amplification of the Gemini archetype, which is all about personal opinions, information, truths. One particular thing about Black Moon Lilith, which I'll highlight, but before I do there, I just want to say that transiting Neptune is opposite Mercury. Okay, this opposition was exact yesterday, and it would have been building up around a day or so before that, and we're still within it now, even though Mercury is actually past Neptune. Mercury is 23, Neptune's 22, so Mercury is in Virgo. But the interesting thing is that Pallas Athena is there as well. And so Mercury does gift us the ability to apply critical reasoning skills in terms of any data we are processing or analysing or observing. And we all have the free choice to actually do that. Of course, with Neptune, first of all, with Neptune and Pallas Athena there, Pallas Athena was with Neptune some time ago because she's gone retrograde, she's come back to Neptune. So again, that's a signature there that's pointing to clear seeing. Well, that's certainly the potential for Pallas Athena in Pisces, conjunct Neptune, the clear seeing of the spiritual divine plan, if you like, Neptune, the ultimate truth, Neptune. But of course, at a mundane personality, everyday consensus level, Neptune opposite Mercury is the quote that I'm going to use is Rob Hand's, because I think it's the best quote to actually describe the energy of Mercury Neptune aspects, particularly in opposition, conjunction, or even square, is manipulating the airwaves to the expense of everybody else. Manipulating the waves to the expense of everybody else. So basically, mass manipulation of information in terms of what people are absorbing and thinking and listening to. And that is happening. Doesn't matter which side you take. I'm not here to tell you what you should do in any way, shape, or form, but I will speak from where I stand in this as objectively as I can without being personal about it. And so relative to the information, Gemini, that's continuously and consistently being exposed, is showing us more and more and more that, and of course this has been in play right from the beginning. It's been in play for the last 18 months, but it's intensified, I would say, in the last 2 months, right? 2-3 months, it's intensified, and every day it's becoming more intensified, right? That is the information that's been, distributed, dispelled, and forced into people's brains, as it were, although nobody can force anything into us, really, at the end of the day. We have choices, but it appears that the choices that we have are proposed to us in a way at the moment that there will be limitations if you don't actually if you don't follow the program. That's obvious, right? We're all aware of that, and we all have a different sort of understanding or perspective of that, right? But what I'm seeing more and more and more, not through your traditional social media, because everything's censored and blocked and removed pretty much immediately. So I'm connected to some other platforms where I'm able to access documentation, presentations, information from experts in their field, from medical individuals, from scientists, from lawyers, from a number of different people that are deciding to actually speak up and speak out, regardless of the consequences that they will incur as a result of speaking up. Many of these people have lost their jobs already because they are speaking up. So it does take bravery and courage to be able to do that. And this is the other thing about the whole Leo season we've just been through, and the Lionsgate, the activation of that, the new moon in Leo that we had as well. All of that was very much pointing us to staying in our heart center and in our truth, being aware of the whole sort of collective race and human family, Aquarius, and understanding that we are progressing into a new future and a new paradigm. It's inevitable. We're not going to be able to stop what's taking place, but we do have a right to choose where we feel we belong in that as well. And I think that's an important thing to speak about, to remind people, and to encourage people. We do have a choice. It's not easy, I know that, but we do have a choice. So Mercury opposite Neptune, over the last couple of days, today and the next couple of days, is really it is an opportunity to see higher truths if you so choose, to remove yourself from the rubbish that's being spewed out through consensus reality media. And if you just drop back into yourself and get a sense of what's going on inside you, when you tune into, let's call it a space, a dimension, an energy, something within you that enables you to actually just be removed from that program out there and sit in a space where you might be able to connect with the actual truth, because there is an actual truth. In fact, there are many. But here's the thing with transiting Lilith. So I use the true position of Lilith. There is also a mean position, which is the more popular one because it's easier to work with. But the difference between true and mean is basically understood through the terms themselves. True means true position, mean means the average position. So when you're looking at a celestial body moving through the zodiac, wouldn't it be, to me at least, it makes more sense, it's more logical that we would actually want to know where the true position is of any given body, as opposed to averaging it out, because the average is not, it's an average. So anyway, there are different views on that, and each to their own, but I actually use the true position, which is more challenging to work with because it's very sort of sporadic in its movement, jumps in and out of about 3 signs every year. Okay, and so this year Black Moon Lilith has basically been in and out of Gemini and Taurus, and we'll actually enter Cancer at some point this year as well, and then we'll really move into the archetype of Cancer as of mid next year, really, because Black Moon Lilith, the true position, she will actually be in Gemini till June next year. I said in my post that it would be April, but I made an error in that. I re-looked at it and it's actually until June. And so there's this movement here with Ceres, Black Moon Lilith and North Node. Now, I did say a while ago with Ceres in Gemini that it's likely to be an experience where, relative to the paradigm that's going on, the story, the program rather, that's going on, a lot of people rushed and made decisions based on the misinformation that was provided, and made some pretty life-altering decisions. Now, I'm not making a judgment on that. I'm just stating what's happened, right? And so the series in Gemini can also result in the experience of feeling a sense of loss or grief about the information that you were imparted, which was misinformation, which led a particular individual into making a decision. Now, I know people in my personal life in that situation that have gone and made a decision based on the V, that now actually regret it, right? Because they were in a space, in a situation, a particular day where there was an amplification of things going on here, and they felt coerced, forced, scared, whatever it is. And now these people are reflecting back on it, and they're not entirely happy with the decision they've made. And that's the series in Gemini reflecting that. Also, I just want to read this comment here about series in Gemini, which I really like. Let me see. Every interconnecting and interrelated aspect deserves attention. This statement is referring to series in Gemini. I'll start again. Every interconnecting and interrelated aspect deserves attention, investigation, and most of all, nurtures for the individuated soul a sense of unity and inclusiveness to the phenomenal world. So the individuated soul is a definition that is used in evolutionary astrology, which describes a soul in a human body that lives outside of the consensus reality. That's the most simple way to explain that. And so the individuated state of existence and being and awareness seems to be a minority on the earth plane. The majority connect with, identify with, and define who they are in their life through the consensus reality and paradigm. That's a fact. That's pretty much always kind of been the way it is. That's why you see at the moment a minority not buying into the program, choosing sovereignty, free will over a program which is being coerced. I mean, you honestly, even if you are in that position, can you actually really deny that there's coercion going on? I don't think we can. I mean, you'd have to have your head in the clouds somewhere, and I don't know what reality you live in, but sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but I mean, just take a look around at what's happening. People are losing their jobs, not being able to buy food or water in France, I heard, if you don't have the V. What does that really, what does that tell you? Is that not some kind of coercion? So now Lilith in Gemini, her journey, which is going to be playing out until June next year, is the uncomfortable truths. We need to think about who Lilith was. Now, most of you are aware. So for those of you that are not, I'm just going to give a couple of key sort of points. So Lilith is an archetype which corresponds to the inner, wild, free, visceral experience of the raw and natural nature of who we are. And the contrast to that, for instance, would be the experience of who we are through the confines of Saturn. Now, Saturn is necessary. It's necessary in every sense of the word, really, in terms of life, reality, our own structure, etc., development, growth, and so forth. But Saturn at its worst is the energy that is the most oppressive and repressive force. It is the energy that can keep us completely blocked, limited, restricted, inhibited, and fear based. It is the outer planets Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Chiron first. Chiron, the rainbow bridge. Chiron opens the door for us to access Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And when we are not in a conscious connection, because we're not disconnected from those energies, none of us are, but relative to our own level of awareness and consciousness, it does require a stepping outside of the consensus reality paradigm and going into a space that is not bound by anything. And that space actually exists within. It doesn't exist out there. It never will exist out there, because out there is defined by the bounds of Saturn. So when you're talking about an archetype like Black Moon Lilith, she is an aspect, an archetype within us that is actually natural to all of us, however, has been severely suppressed and oppressed, and in fact demonized as well, over thousands of years. But in truth, her energy it's got nothing to do with a demonic sort of feminine goddess. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with sovereignty, truth, autonomy, freedom, equality. That's what she actually represents. So in the archetype of Gemini, she's stirring in the mass consciousness, in the human family. She is stirring the inquiry, the questions. That's what Gemini does. Gemini asks questions. Before it's actually even received the answer to a question it's asked, it's already on to the next question. That's the nature of Gemini. So because Gemini is the archetype that has a tendency to divide and split, when that is played out and filtered out over 8.5 billion people on the planet, we are going to see that being played out in a pure division, which is in fact indeed what is going on. So the opportunity is there to speak our truth, to speak our sense of sovereignty, to speak freedom, to speak freely, to ask questions, to inquire, to investigate, to research, to listen, to pass on information. All of us can do that. And it just comes down to, when you're talking about truth, because Sagittarius is the polarity to Gemini, and Sagittarius is the archetype of truth. Gemini is the information. We channel the information. Through the airwaves, we get all this information. We have access to it infinitely through technology. And then the brain, mind, Gemini, left brain aspect of us starts to put it into play, as it were, put it into its compartment, connect the dots. But when it stays at that level, all it is a whirlwind of information, which ultimately comes through in chaotic ways. There is no meaning in it, because it's just information for the sake of information. But we need to, from an evolutionary perspective, we need to access information and use the polarity Sagittarius right brain intuition to discern the truth of all the information we are being exposed to. And the trick with that is not jumping to conclusions quickly. It would be, in my opinion, it would be more wise to be aware, observe, and wait, be patient. There's a lot more you're going to hear and see, and there's more and more every single day. Relative to the V, that liquid that's inserted into people's bodies, I mean, the amount of inconsistencies relative to the different types, relative to age, relative to symptoms, adverse reactions, and whatnots, the information that has been produced around that and communicated on the consensus level through consensus media has been nothing short of lies, which is Gemini at its worst. Gemini at its worst typically can be lying. That's just how that's how that archetype has a tendency to operate. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's not. And certainly with Mercury opposite Neptune over these few days, there's going to be massive manipulation of the airwaves, massive massive things that are being manipulated in order to to have the program be effective for the majority of people. On the other hand, at a more evolved level, it is also the potential for clear truths to be seen as well. Pallas Athena and Neptune, truth. Neptune, Pallas Athena, clear seeing. So, Black Moon Lilith, because she represents the things that I just said before, she is also the archetype that is not an archetype that is generally in connection with the average person that lives in a consensus reality. Because when Lilith stands up, excuse me, when the archetype of Lilith speaks through a particular soul or individual or community, it poses a threat to the status quo. So it's the most typical reaction to an archetypal Lilith person or community is to shame people, to demonize them, to vilify them, and to make them wrong. And so, but people who have a strong Lilith frequency in their chart and they resonate with that energy, then really not going to give a shit about it. And I'm certainly one of those people. Hence why I speak about what I do. Now, uncomfortable truths with Lilith in Gemini is really one of the biggest themes, apart from the, dissecting of information and speaking your mind and speaking your opinion, even at the expense of being vilified or demonized or judged, etc. I'm not saying, however, that it is our duty to walk around and tell other people they are wrong if they are taking an opposite position to us, because that's only going to create more division. That's splitting things up. That's saying, I'm right, you're wrong. And even though you may feel that in your heart, and that may be the truth for you, it's futile to have conversations like that with anybody, really, because nobody wants to be wrong. That's the ego is insatiable, and it'll defend itself to the death in terms of taking a position of being right. The ego never wants to be, it doesn't want to lose. If you are wrong, it means you've lost in that personality scheme of things, in terms of how we operate on the personality level. So if we allow all that personality stuff and I'm right, you're wrong kind of narratives come through, we're not going to be very effective in what we are trying to accomplish. And that depends on what you are trying to accomplish. What are your motives for saying this or for saying that? What's the real motive and desire behind that? Either way, there is a division. A division will remain for quite some time. until this program reaches its next sort of level, if you like. But no matter where you stand, I think it is important that you check in with your heart and ask yourself, do I really believe and feel that what I'm choosing and what I'm perhaps suggesting to others to do or think about, is that coming from a pure truth in my heart, or is that coming from a place of fear? And there is a clear distinction between a heartfelt, true-based direction, centeredness, to a complete chaotic mental stream of fear that evokes a particular narrative, discussion, choice, etc. And we all have the ability to check in on ourselves with that and decide accordingly. And I think we need to. Sovereignty is our natural birthright. It always has been, it always will be. There's always been historically things that, sort of weave through the narrative of reality that attempt to minimize or strip people away of that very thing that is our divine inherent right, and hence the chaos that emerges through it, which is an important process for evolution and growth, because evolution is not just happening on an individual level, it's happening on a collective level. It always has been, it always will be. And at the current times, and I've said this before, but just to remind us all, what we are really seeing playing out is the mass conflict between the two titans, Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is the consensus reality, and Uranus is sovereignty, freedom, individuation, liberation, individuality, stepping outside of an oppressed patriarchal paradigm. And we had the Pluto-Saturn conjunction as well that, we've been experiencing the last couple of years. Pluto in Capricorn since 2008. Pluto enters Aquarius in 2023. We just kind of get a little interlude, a little glimpse into what that's going to be, and then Pluto sets its motion into Aquarius in 2024. So frankly, I have pretty strong intuitive feelings of what that's going to be, but I'm not going to speak about it just yet. I'm going to wait a little bit more. Okay, I just want to touch on Venus opposite Chiron. Perhaps I'll just clear those lines just to create a bit more clarity. So there's transiting Venus in Libra, forming an opposition to Chiron. This has been building up all week, basically, and will be exact tomorrow, and will still be in effect, a couple of days post tomorrow. And so there's two levels to this. Clearly, the first level is our own personal level of Venus and Chiron, which will speak to our personal relationships. That doesn't mean just intimate relationships. That also speaks to friendships and anyone that we love, for that matter. We love different people for different reasons, right? It's not always about an intimate relationship. We love friends, we love family, whomever. So Venus is the goddess of love. Whoever and what we love, that's what Venus basically speaks to and activates. So in the sign of Libra, it's got to do with stepping into the experience of the person sitting opposite you and understanding their value system, and likewise them understanding yours as well. It is about balance and harmony and beauty and artistry and all those things. Of course, it's Venus in Libra is always those things and always will be. Venus is evening star at the moment. And so in the sign of Libra, it is the sign of Libra really defines the evening star. It's the night sky goddess, if you like. It's the goddess Urania. In terms of the Venus star point, we have a morning star, we have an evening star, right? At the moment, we're in the evening star phase. The evening star means that she's furthest away from us and very close to the stars, if you like. So she has a portal of energy where she just directly has access to divine wisdom. So the matter of our own personal values in a relationship, in any relationship, whether it's new, whether it's current, whether it's slowly developing at the moment, these are some of the issues that will be strongly coming to the surface, for better or for worse. I mean, it may be simply that you're finding a great sense of alignment with a particular individual at the moment because you share the same sort of value system, particularly around the matters of what's going on in the world at the moment. There is that side of it, and there is the side of it where we will also be interacting with certain individuals where our values might feel rejected, or we may reject another person's values, because Chiron is, yes, the wounded healer. Yes, he was an artist, an astrologer, and a skillful master in archery, in healing remedies, and so on and so forth. One of the most talented and gifted sort of gods, if you like. So the potential to activate the antidote of our deepest wounds and pains and suffering is accessed and activated through Chiron. But typically the Chiron wounds that we feel and experience and have experienced over many lifetimes are not how can I put it? We can't heal a wound unless we actually go in there and feel it, just to put it in very simple terms. I've got a cramp in my foot. That's not ideal right now. Just do a bit of a stretch and rub on my foot. Well, there you go. The emergencies are coming by, so it's a good chance to stop for a second. So Chiron opposite Venus, I see that as a few different things. Opportunity to heal very deep personal matters in those that you love, or a particular person you love, and or seeing where you have been wounded because there was an experience of rejection. I say this every time I speak about Chiron because it's just generally never referred to from what I've seen. Chiron, first and foremost, quite apart from being the wounded healer, corresponds to where we experience, or are likely to experience, or have experienced a sense of rejection. So wherever it is in your natal chart, that's one of the core themes that's basically lying dormant and is activated at different times in life, and sometimes multiple times, until we work through that chironic wound and get in touch with that the antidote to that, which is basically going into that raw visceral wound, pulling off the band-aid and experiencing what that is. So Chiron opposite Venus can speak to all these sorts of things in our personal relationships at the moment. And given the narrative and the program of what's going on in the reality at the moment, it will actually quite likely trigger people in relationships, even in friendships, as I said, experiencing a sense of rejection most likely because there's a divided position that the two people take. That's pretty much obvious. It's happening everywhere. But what I'm saying is with this Chiron Venus energy, this kind of theme can become quite pronounced at the moment in a lot of people's lives. And I know it is. I know it is, just even from the people that communicate with me and that speak to me, and even the position that I take in that as well. So just, I suppose, just be aware of that. And we all have to decide what we want to do with that when we become aware of that, or we experience that, or that comes up and it shows up as a primary theme in our current relationships at the moment. What do we do with that? And that's that question. I cannot answer that question for you. That's something that you need to decide and work through yourself. Each of us do, right? There's an extreme sense of vulnerability with Chiron, opposite Venus. And Venus it's our own personal sense of self-worth as well. There's a real tenderness and vulnerability at the moment with Chiron opposite Venus in our relationships with others. It might be that we are having a wonderful experience with a particular individual where we do feel quite vulnerable with that particular person or individual, but we're able to sit with that, or embrace that, or be open to the possibility of the growth that can come out of that. So there's also really positive things that can happen pretty much with any archetype, any planet, any transit, etc. It's never just one way or the other. It's always there's a polarity, there's a dual nature to everything. We live in a world of duality. So we experience that within us based on the archetypes and the planets and so on and so forth. Okay, so let me see. Oh yeah, I was just going to say, with going back to Lilith again, because it describes an individual who will speak about uncomfortable truths, Gemini. What was so what this archetype brings up when a person takes the position of Lilith and communicates and speaks through that frequency, which is essentially fearless. It's a fearless position to take, a position of sovereignty, courage, truth, freedom, at the expense of being excluded by everybody else. Lilith did not give an absolute damn about being sort of cast out of the world, society. Now, not many people are going to do that, are they? Let's take a little look-see at reality. What I see is the majority of people on the planet, just caving into what I call a program, aligning with it, identifying with it, however you want to interpret it. It's very few people that will live off grid, stand in truth and sovereignty, independence, individuation, liberation, stepping into non-security. That's what Uranus is. Uranus is non-security, and Saturn is the false security. And hence the false program that's been played out is based on Saturn, which is false fear. And yet people are just hooking into it left, right, and center. And so an archetypal Lilith expression through a person will basically make the environment very uncomfortable for the person or persons that are in that space when Lilith actually speaks through Gemini. it's going to make the environment around them, everyone around them, very uncomfortable. Perfect example, I saw a brilliant video of a public sort of space, if you like, in a hall in I just can't remember the country now, somewhere near Africa, I think. And there was a board, like a panel of experts who were controlling what was going to happen, Saturn, discussed, shared. And so the people that were sitting in that hall, in the audience, were basically doctors, specialists, scientists, lawyers, you name it. All these like a community of people came together who all have specialties in different fields, all came together for the same common purpose, and that was to discuss the truth of what is actually going on relative to freedom of choice, health, scientific evidence, and so on and so forth. And what I saw was when one particular doctor stood up to speak, who had a background in, I've just forgotten exactly what his background was, but it was, it was a very, very, very specialized, specific background in science and biochemistry and you name it, all this stuff, right? Very experienced man in his field. He had documentation, evidence of documentation of what he wanted to kind of address and bring to the awareness of everybody in that space. And that he only got to speak for about perhaps 7 or 8 minutes. And through that 7 and 8 minutes, he was just being interrupted, shut down. He was basically doing a Lilith in Gemini thing, and the panel in front of him was Saturn. And that's what's happening on the world at the moment in kind of like every kind of community or state or country or town or wherever, right? So, and they literally, this panel of people, that you could actually see that they were literally physically uncomfortable with what he was speaking. It was uncomfortable truths. That's what Lilith in Gemini means. So making what appears to be an uncomfortable environment or space for another because of the truth that you are presenting, for instance. And also Lilith in Gemini brings up taboo subjects. Because she has these antennas, and Gemini has antennas too, in a way, right? Left brain. And so draws all that information in and essentially spits it back out. So, yeah. I think the necessary thing for all of us, regardless of the position we take, is to maintain curiosity, to be inquisitive, to be aware, to be objective, to remain anchored in our heart, to feel that what we are participating in or choosing to participate in, to feel that it is aligned with our highest truth, with our highest self, and that it is not aligned with fear. And if we are really honest with ourselves, we'll be able to answer that question for ourselves. But it takes balls and honesty and courage. I think that's all. And just finally as well, I've already spoken about this, so I won't go into it again, but it is very interesting. Vesta in Libra, Venus is catching up to conjunct Vesta in Libra. And like I said in my, what did I do? I did a video on I think it was Vesta and Venus. I can't quite remember now. I can't even see it. Where is it? Yeah, that's right. Venus and No, that's another one. Okay, never mind. I have spoken, however, about Venus's ingress into Libra catching up with Vesta, speaking about justice and law matters, just basically popping up left, right, and center in every country, in every town, in every city, through different individuals, communities, and so forth. I saw that there's a really huge lawsuit taking place in America. I've just forgotten the state, but there's a number of pilots from an airline that have hired a particular attorney to fight for their freedom, because they are being mandated to have the liquid inserted into their body in order to maintain their license as a pilot and fly as a commercial pilot. And the fact is, see, I've worked in the aviation industry many years ago for about 7 years. And I can tell you now that being, 35,000 feet above sea level as a full-time job, that takes its toll on your body. So things like blood clots and things like that are very typical for the career of a pilot, for instance, or a flight attendant. It really does take a toll on your body. And so to already be kind of exposed and vulnerable and susceptible to those sorts of issues arising in your health because of the profession you've chosen, and then to have a mandation of a what I would like to call a poison. Sorry if that offends anybody, but that's literally how I see it. To have that forcefully implemented into our sovereignty, it just doesn't sit with me. It doesn't sit as an authentic, protective, honest level of intention and motivation. It sits at the opposite end of that spectrum. So anyway, there's big law cases going on with numerous pilots. Some of them are scared to speak up, but there's a whole bunch of them that have come together. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of people, a lot more than you think, a lot more than you realize, working very hard to find ways to help people maintain their freedom of choice and their sovereignty. There's a lot of people working very hard at this in all sorts of streams and fields. And so that's there. Do not think that it's not happening, because it actually is. Of course, it's just never presented in consensus media. And so we're left just being totally bombarded with the storyline that's being, filtered through consensus media and so forth. And of course, that's designed to, as I said at the very beginning, to induce severe anxiety and move us out of our heart center and have us sort of stuck here on the left linear brain with an overload of information, most of which is really scary, and just evokes fear. And so that we basically run and take action and make decisions from that space. And in retrospect, there's probably going to be a lot of people that wish they hadn't have done that, which is why I'm trying to, through my voice, inspire people to inquire for themselves what is right for them and what is actually really true. And again, just finally, we can't deny the evidence scientifically of what's showing up relative to the consequences of this particular liquid that people are choosing for whatever reason that may be. And I'm not making a judgment on that. I understand why people do or have or are thinking about it, but I would ask you to really seriously think about it a lot more seriously than, and it's not the serious fear-based shit that's being spewed out of the media, because the stuff that's being spewed out there is that this is going to be your savior. This is going to be what's going to save you. And it's just not going to be what's going to save anybody, unfortunately. So look for the savior within you. That's where it is, which is in the truth of your heart. I'll be back soon with much more. Transiting Pluto and transiting Saturn are both going to be going direct. That's not happening till October, but that's not too far away. I think that's going to be highly significant relative to the our lives and, you know, the reality before us. So there's a lot more to talk about still. I'll be back soon, sending you all much love, and hoping that you are able to find moments of peace and centeredness and security within, because the security is not going to come from out there. It in truth, it can never come from out there anyway, but at the moment it's so magnified, so intensified, that you can see a false I can literally see this false sense of security that's being sold to convince people to make certain decisions. It's a false sense of security. And so until we find that security deep within, no matter what happens out there, we're always at the mercy of feeling secure and safe from what's happening out there. And that can just never happen. Even when this whole story and situation is eventually moves to another level, or at any point in our life, security cannot come from outside of ourselves. It never has, it never will. See you soon. Much love. Thanks for watching.